The federal government has expressed its readiness for constructive dialogue with the leadership of the Republic of Niger in a bid to de-escalate the growing diplomatic tensions between the two nations. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuggar, stated in a release on Tuesday that Nigeria is committed to fostering peace and stability in West Africa. He emphasized the need for candid discussions to address mutual concerns raised by the President of the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland in Niger Republic, General Abdourahmane Tchiani. Tchiani had accused Nigeria of collaborating with France to destabilize his junta-led government. In a Christmas Day interview, he alleged that France had forged alliances with militant groups in the Lake Chad region to undermine Niger's security, claiming Nigeria was complicit in this scheme. And now to discuss this, we're joined by African Affairs Analyst Achike Chude. Mr. Chude, many thanks for joining us. Let's just get started because we're pressed for time. How might the ongoing diplomatic tensions between Nigeria and Niger impact regional security in West Africa? Particularly in context of the fight against terrorism and other transnational threats.
Yeah, well, transnational threats, that's the expression you use. Transnational simply tells you that it's beyond borders, it's beyond a particular country's, territorial territory. And so some of these threats that we're seeing, are happening across borders. And so there is that necessity, absolutely necessary that countries that are experiencing the issue of, cross-border crimes, insurgency, by Islamists or some other groups, must work together, must cooperate together, must collaborate together to be able to bring some level of sanity to these countries. Obviously, the fact that crime has gone is now an international issue also implies that every decision, every effort, every attempt to stem it must have an international dimension to it. Nation states must collaborate together at every level, either at the level of the funding and financing of violent activities or terrorist activities. They must work together to ensure that access to some of these groups from one part of the world to the other through money laundering and other means are curtailed. And the only way that can happen is if nations are able to collaborate at various levels to be able to stem the tide. And so it is very, very fundamental that these countries work together. They have no choice. It is a matter of mutual interest that they work together because they face a common interest from these, militant and radical and violent organizations.
Right. Let's also talk about the potential economic, consequences and what they might be with this strained relationship that we're now seeing between Nigeria and Niger. How might this affect trade, investment, and even cross-border movement between the two countries?
Well, before it's not the issue of negative economic situations between both countries, is not something that is as a result of this new tension between Niger and Nigeria, with them accusing Nigeria of collaborating with France to undermine Niger. Already that has been affected by the fact of the pullout of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali from ECOWAS. That has obviously economic impact on the negative side. Because, of course, that in a way, it becomes an obstacle and a stumbling block for ECOWAS, because ECOWAS was set up to ensure collaboration at both the political, economic level, and even at the cultural level across all the countries that make up the ECOWAS. So the fact that some of these countries have pulled out of ECOWAS actually has caused a very big problem that was unenvisaged by everybody. And so that has serious economic bearing on the countries that pulled out and the countries that they pulled out from, because there's been all manners of relationships between these countries. Of course, in some of the countries, you find out that there is some level of homogeneity between citizens, especially at the border areas of one country and the bordering, communities from the other country. And so there is this historical link that citizens of different countries have with one another. that has been affected by this impasse between ECOWAS and these three countries. And then at the economic level, there is no way, especially these countries that will not be affected, because there has been a common, financial agreement and collaboration and cooperation between all the countries in West Africa. The movement of goods and services and people, has also been affected drastically. And that was why when these countries decided to finalize their pull-out from ECOWAS starting from late January, they on their own unilaterally, continue to, make declarations to the effect that the visas will still be available free to citizens from a fellow ECOWAS countries, because they know themselves that it will be economically suicidal for them to completely pull out of, to stop any manner of interaction between the peoples and businesses across, these three countries and then the remaining ECOWAS countries. No man, it is said, is an island. No nation also is an island. Even the most powerful nation on earth need other nations for them to be able to do well economically.
You talked about, the international community, and let's talk about their role now. This has to do with the African Union, the AU, and even the United Nations. How will they play in, mediating the situation and facilitating dialogue between Nigeria and Niger, should the time come?
Well, it will depend on whether there's an exacerbation of a crisis or whether this tension, right now, what you have is tension. You might not exactly call it a crisis. It has not gotten to that crisis point. And that's why leaders on both sides are beginning to talk. But the thing is, for Niger, when Niger makes it, because it's a very grievous allegation that Niger is making against Nigeria. Nigeria does not have a history of destabilizing, member countries, the African countries. Nigeria, does not have, it's not in the character of Nigeria. If one has to be truthful about, has to say it as it is. The reality is that Africa has continued to be the center point of Nigeria's, foreign relationships, with the world, essentially Africa, then from Africa to the rest of the world, and so I do not expect any intervention, whether by the United Nations or the African Union, because it has not gotten to that level. There is still a mutually, respectful. We are still in a mutually respectful environment in terms of both countries. And so, when the Nigerian leader made that statement, I'm sure that the Nigerian leaders also made overtures to them, so that they can sit down and they also talk. And of course, that Nigeria has responded as seriously to this matter, describing it as illusionary, and that there is nothing of such. If Niger, the way these things happen, if they are serious about these allegations, then it is expected that when they meet with the Nigerian authorities, they will show Nigerian authorities proof of interference, proof of collusion and collaboration with France. Over to justify the accusations that they are making. And I'm not sure that they have that proof. Who knows? I don't really think that they do have the proof, but you never can tell.
All right. Well, I must say thank you so much for taking out the time, Mr. Achike Chude, for just giving us a bit more insight. African Affairs Analyst there, Achike Chude, just a bit of insight on the Nigeria-Niger, just the role going between the two countries. Once again, thank you.